Re-Animator, Episode 3, The Serum Secret Opening Scene. Interior, West and Dan's apartment. Night. A severed human arm rests on a medical tray. The fingers are limp, lifeless. Dr. Herbert West, sleeves rolled up, meticulously prepares a syringe of his refined glowing green reagent. Dan Kane watches uneasily, still haunted by their last failed experiment. West injects the reagent into the arm. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, the fingers twitch. The tendons stretch unnaturally. Suddenly, the hand snaps upright, fingers curling like a spider's legs. Then, it moves on its own. Dan watches, horrified, as the arm scuttles across the table like a predatory creature. It lunges toward him. He recoils as West calmly grabs a scalpel and pins the rogue limb to the table. West smirks. Now we're getting somewhere. Title sequence rolls. Act 1, The Ethics of Reanimation. Dan, deeply disturbed, questions his involvement with West. He confronts him about the botched hospital experiment and the deadly consequences of the serum. Dan, you're not saving lives, West. You're making things worse. West, scientific progress is never clean. Do you think antibiotics were discovered without trial and error? Dan threatens to walk away, but West reminds him that they're both already implicated. If the authorities discover what happened at the hospital, Dan will go down with him. Meanwhile, Dr. Carl Hill secretly studies the stolen reagent sample in his own lab. He's seen what it can do, but he wants to control it. He begins planning how to take West's research for himself. Act 2, The Blackmail. West is summoned to Hill's office, where the older doctor unveils his knowledge. Hill, you think you're so clever, West. But I know what you've been doing. The dead walking, the bloodshed in the morgue. I could destroy you. Hill demands West hand over all his research, or he will turn him and Dan over to the authorities. West, furious but composed, refuses. You wouldn't know what to do with my work. You're a parasite, Hill. Always stealing from greater minds. Hill smiles coldly. We'll see about that. After West leaves, Hill locks his office door and retrieves something from his hidden medical freezer, a severed human head. He injects it with the stolen reagent. The eyes snap open. The mouth gasps for air. The head is alive. Hill watches in awe, then begins to hear whispers, something unnatural inside his mind. The serum is more than just a revival agent, it's awakening something else. Act 3, The Confrontation. Determined to eliminate Hill before he can betray him, West devises a plan. He invites Hill to his apartment, pretending to surrender his research. When Hill arrives, West lunges at him from behind, injecting him with a syringe of paralytic agent. Hill, struggling to move, collapses as West methodically sets up a guillotine-style surgical saw. Dan walks in at the last moment and tries to stop West. Dan, Jesus Christ, West, are you insane? West, he was going to ruin everything. Besides, I'm curious. West activates the saw. Hill's head is severed clean from his body. Blood sprays across the room. Dan stares, speechless. But then, Hill's severed head suddenly gasps. His mouth moves. Hill, whispering, grinning, you should have let me have it, West. Dan and West stagger back in horror. Hill is still alive. Act 4, The Monster Awakens. West, fascinated, immediately injects more reagent into Hill's severed head and his now headless body separately. Dan, what the hell are you doing? He's already dead. West, this is a historic moment, Dan. The first fully conscious reanimated subject. Hill's head begins laughing. His body sits upright, twitching violently, feeling its own missing head. Then, the impossible happens, Hill's head begins to communicate telepathically with his body. The headless figure lunges at West and Dan, grabbing instruments and thrashing wildly. In the chaos, Hill's head commands his body to attack. The headless monstrosity knocks Dan unconscious and overpowers West. As West screams, the screen cuts to black. Final scene and cliffhanger. Later that night, A janitor at Miskatonic University hears a noise from Hill's office. He opens the door and stares in horror. Dr. Hill's severed head sits upright on his desk, eyes wide, grinning. The headless body stands behind him, motionless like a grotesque puppet. Hill, smirking, telepathically whispering, "We're only getting started." End episode 3.